This news just into us here at CNN. Two law enforcement officials tell CNN that the White House is planning to send federal agents to Chicago. This is happening as part of the administration's plans to crack down on violence and crime in the country's major cities. So CNN's Evan Perez is the one breaking the news. And so, Evan, what are the administration's plans for Chicago?
Well, Brooke, we're expecting to hear a lot more about this as the summer goes along. This is along the lines of what the president says is an uptick in violence and crime in cities that are run by Democratic governors, and Chicago is first in line. So we expect that there's going to be an announcement in the next couple of days from the White House and from the Justice Department that they're surging a number of federal agents to Chicago. Now, what exactly they're going to be doing, it appears that some of it is tackling gun crimes, people who have outstanding warrants, and a number of other issues that are a problem in Chicago. You've seen, obviously, a number of shootings in Chicago and in other cities. This appears to be separate, Brooke, from what we've seen in Portland, Oregon over the last few days. You've seen federal agents there clashing with protesters, which has gotten a lot of attention. And of course, some of the mayors have been pushing back, saying we don't want federal resources here doing that kind of thing. This appears to be something separate that's going on in Chicago. We heard from the Chicago mayor this afternoon. She's basically saying, look, if they're here to help us get some of these guns off the streets, then they're welcome. But if it's more of what's going on in Portland, then you can stay away.
Clashes between federal agents and protesters in Portland, Oregon seem to be escalating. Federal agents used tear gas on protesters overnight, some of whom broke through a fence and tried to set fire to the federal courthouse. A 53-year-old Navy veteran says agents beat him with batons and sprayed him with tear gas. You see that going on in this video right now. He said he was just trying to talk to the agents over the weekend. Protests in Portland have gone on for more than 50 consecutive days. The mayor told me yesterday that the protests and the intensity have escalated since the Trump administration began sending in those federal agents. Mayors of 5 major cities sent a joint letter to President Trump and Attorney General Barr today calling for the removal of federal officers from their cities, saying, quote, the unilateral deployment of these forces into American cities is unprecedented and violates fundamental constitutional protections and tenets of federalism, unquote. This after President Trump today announced that he's going to send even more agents into cities run by Democrats. He specifically listed Philadelphia, Oakland, Detroit, and Baltimore as places where he may send federal law enforcement agents. The political context of this, of course, cannot be ignored. The president is sinking in polls less than 4 months before the presidential election, and he seems eager, if not desperate, to find any issue to run on. CNN national security analyst Carrie Cordero joins us now to discuss. Carrie, what's your reaction to this push from President Trump to send federal agents into cities where the mayors say they don't want them? Is this responding to a real threat, or is this just politics?
Well, what I'm worried about, Jake, is that he's stepping on his political influence onto the Department of Homeland Security to use this big law enforcement force to go beyond the scope of what their normal activities are to do. So DHS should be protecting, they have a role to protect the federal facilities there. What they should not be doing is going out into the streets of Portland or any other street to enforce criminal law.
Are there any legal actions that these mayors or any governors can take beyond just sending the president a letter?
Well, I think what they need to do first is they need to be speaking directly. The federal government, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Attorney General needs to engage. They need to be talking directly to local state officials in Oregon and in Portland to determine who has the proper lanes of the road. And then they need to also, there has been a referral from the U.S. Attorney in Portland about potential civil rights violations that these DHS officers may have engaged in. So there's a potential legal avenue there when it comes to infringement on civil rights. But really, they need to talk to each other. This non-dialogue, we're not going to talk to each other, is ridiculous. It's not any way to run a city. And the state and locals need to say, here's what we're going to do to provide security. And then DHS needs to back down and get their Border Patrol officers outside of the interior of the country. Finally, Congress is probably going to need to step in to look at the oversight and accountability within the Department of Homeland Security more generally.